Hi guys. So we have reviewed and talked about the elements of argument, those parts that make a good argument. What we're going to do next is read arguments and trace the argument. So while reading, we're going to look for those parts to see that it has all those elements that make it a strong argument. The reading we're going to practice with first is called Adopt a Puppy. So your family wants a puppy. Do you buy purebred or adopt from a shelter? Adoption is the way to go. So I can tell, it's very evident to me that there is the writer's claim. Their opinion is obviously that you should adopt versus buying a purebred. Then this author continues, first, when you adopt a dog, you are saving a life. There's a nice transition that tells me, oh, this is going to be my first reason. So when you adopt a dog, you're saving a life. While that's a good reason, if they stop there, it's not very effective because we may not really know what the person is talking about. So let's read on. There are millions of dogs that need homes. When people choose to buy rather than adopt, homeless dogs spend their lives in shelters or are put down. In fact, the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals estimates that as many as 4 million dogs suffer in shelters every year because there are no homes for them. With recent natural disasters, even more dogs need homes. So this person goes through to thoroughly explain and offer examples and gives further evidence of what they're talking about. So their evidence here, they have millions of dogs need homes. They say that homeless dogs spend their lives in shelters or are put down. And they give a professional statistic. American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals mentions that as many as 4 million dogs suffer in shelters every year. So there is definite evidence. There's examples. There's a statistic given by a reliable source. So that person has given evidence and explained their reason. Now look here, again, this person uses a really nice transition to help us know that they're moving on to a new reason. So second, adopting a dog is less expensive than buying a purebred. So that's their second reason. They're talking about the price. It's less expensive. Some people claim that it's worth the money to buy a purebred because shelter dogs are unpredictable or unhealthy, but trustworthy animal shelters do everything they can to make sure their dogs are healthy and adoptable. Going to make sure that there's some evidence or explanation there. But what I noticed is they're talking about some people claim that it's worth the money to buy a purebred. So they're actually bringing in a counter opposing view there. So I'm going to just make that a different color. So some people claim that it's worth the money to buy purebred, and they give the reason because they're unpredictable and unhealthy. But then they come back with their rebuttal or their reason. But trustworthy animal shelters do everything they can to make sure their dogs are healthy and adoptable. I like how that author kind of threw that opposing view in there. Volunteer trainers work with the dogs to prepare them for adoption and to determine what type of family situation would be best for the dog. For example, a nice transition for evidence, and notice the comma following. One dog might be best suited for a home with no other pets. Shelters also have veterinarians who examine and treat the dogs when they arrive at the shelter. We've got more evidence here. So they're saying that volunteers train and work with the dogs to prepare them and to determine the family. And then we'll read on. Shelters also have veterinarians who examine and treat the dogs when they arrive at the shelter. So when they said some people think they're going to be unhealthy, they're counterclaiming or refuting that fact by saying that vets check them over and treat them. Shelters also recommend that the entire family, including any other pets, visit the shelter to spend the day with a prospective dog to see if it's the right fit. When you adopt from a reliable shelter, you can feel confident that you're getting a great pet. If there's any information to add, I guess they could say that they allow visits to the shelter. So you want to make sure it's a good fit, a right fit. Finally, and I just want to point out that's not only a nice transition followed by a comma, but it fits into our themos. It's a transition, so it would be followed by a comma. If you really want a purebred, you can adopt one. Many people think animal shelters only have mutts, but an estimated 25% of the dogs at shelters are purebreds. So their reason, if you really want a purebred, you can still adopt one. You don't have to always buy one. And then we get into the evidence to support it. And they give another nice statistic. But an estimated 25% of the dogs at the shelters are purebreds. So a quarter or 25% of the animals or dogs are purebreds. There are also rescue organizations for almost every type of purebred. For example, the Dalmatian Rescue Organization finds homes for Dalmatians that have been abandoned by their owners. And the Greyhound Project helps retired racing greyhounds find homes. So they're giving specific examples. So again, we've got substantial reasons supported by strong evidence, examples, statistics. When getting a dog, think about adoption first. You can save a life and find the perfect dog for your family. So notice that the person ends this paper by restating their claim, but in a new and different way. Earlier, they said adoption is the way to go. And then to conclude, they just say, think about adoption first. You can save a life and find the perfect dog for your family. So again, they're just kind of restating that claim to close up their paper. So all the elements of the argument are here. And I just want to go back to point out where we had the opposing view, this is actually, I highlighted in green as evidence, but it's also definitely the counterclaim because they're coming back with evidence to support or to oppose that opposing view. All right, you will next be applying this, what we just figured out, and we're going to be writing it on a template that looks like this. So much like how an argument will be laid out. So I have my highlighting next to me so that I can refer back to the text, but I'm going to fill everything in on this template. Highlighting isn't necessary to trace the argument, but it certainly does help to really bring things out and makes it easier for me to transfer it onto this template. So the claim is adoption or adopt dogs. I guess I'll just say that, adopt dogs. And I'm just paraphrasing. I don't have to write this all in complete sentences. We're kind of call that caveman language. So the first reason, if you remember, was first, you're saving a life. So I'm going to just write down save a life. Whoops. And the evidence that they give was that millions of dogs need homes. Many dogs are put down. So we'll take one thing at a time here. Millions need homes. Four million dogs suffer in shelters. Each year. Okay. And then the second reason was that it's less expensive. And the evidence that was strong evidence that was provided, let's see. This is also where they bring in the counterclaim. So I'm going to jump to that right away. So the opposing claim is that it's worth the money to buy purebred. And then the counterclaim that we talked about here is that animal shelters do everything to make the dogs healthy and adoptable. Oh, I guess I should add on here. The reason that they think it's worth the money is because they're unhealthy and unpredictable. Basically, they're saying you don't know what you're getting. But the counterclaim then is that, so if I look back at the text, go back in here. So the counterclaim is that they do everything they can to make sure they're healthy. Volunteer trainers work with the dogs. Shelters have vets who examine and treat them, and they get familiar with the family. So I just filled that in so you wouldn't have to wait for me to write. So we have those counterclaims, which kind of fall in with our reason of being less expensive, and then so that kind of that evidence is given down here. And then finally, you can always adopt a purebred. Oops, I want that to say can adopt a purebred. And then the reading gave several or a couple rescues and such. So you could, so if we go back here, where was that? 25% of the dogs are purebreds, so that's a strong statistic. 25% are purebreds. And it also recommends rescue organizations. So we could just say rescues. And they talked about Dalmatians and Greyhounds. I had a Dalmatian. Loved that boy. His name was Ricky. All right. So, as far as this argument goes, we were able to trace all the elements of the argument to make sure we understood this person's point of view. And we also know that this person had support to back up their reasons. Your next step will be to apply this to a another reading that is in your packet